We're ready for our faculty development. Today we have Dr. Sharita Strong from the Department of Psychiatry at UNMC, who is here to give us a faculty development update on having a growth mindset as a pediatrician who strives to be inclusive. Thanks for joining us, Dr. Strong.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Simonson. And what a wonderful opportunity to come after all of those celebrations. That is really exciting to hear all of those positive things going on in your department, and happy Administrative Professionals Day to anyone on the week, to anyone on the call. So I am Dr. Sharita A. Strong. I am a psychiatrist. I've been on campus, I like to tell the story, since about '98 when I started research, and then I started medical school and residency, joined the faculty in 2008, and just loved it so much. I'm still here. I have the role of Assistant Vice Chancellor. That's been the diversity role at UNMC for the last couple of years. And so I'm honored to be here today. Dr. Gallahan, if I'm saying his name right, reached out and asked me to provide a couple of comments. And I also had a wonderful opportunity to talk with Dr. Stulman. So glad to be here. It's going to be a whirlwind. I'll try not to speak too fast, try not to go too fast, and hopefully you'll have an opportunity to reflect on the information. So let me make sure I can advance. Okay, so we are going to discuss one of the things that Dr. Gallahan had asked. He asked 3 objectives, and I said, well, let's try to pare it down just a little bit, but discuss how to create safe spaces for learners, staff, and faculty to develop and maintain a growth mindset. So we'll be talking about a growth mindset. There'll be a couple of activities for you all to be reflective. And I just always want to remind everyone, I am a psychiatrist. I am not a pediatrician. I will take very special care of you in this moment, but just be mindful. I have no other disclosures for this information today. So first activity, I wanted to start with a riddle. A father and his son are in a car accident. The father dies at the scene and the son is badly injured, is rushed to the hospital. In the operating room, the surgeon looks at the boy and says, I can't operate on this boy. He is my son. How can that be? So do we have any answers? Anybody want to put anything in the chat or unmute? And let me see if I pull up my chat, I think you will see my chat. So I'm not going to open up my chat. Okay, does anybody know? Let me see, I open up the chat. Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to have to get okay, right. The surgeon was his mother, or he had 2 fathers. And sometimes this riddle is really stumping for some people, because some people are like, no, that's not possible. So I love the faculty member that put that in the chat. I always like to start with norms. When we talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion, we have to remind folks that sometimes it's really difficult to have these conversations. And so the elephant in the room, just reminding folks that it's uncomfortable, but on the other side of an uncomfortable conversation, we know that tremendous amount of growth can occur. Also acknowledging the fact that lessons leave, but things that are shared, if it's personal, stay in this space and stay confidential as we try to create safe and brave spaces. Another major point that we like to share in this space is that you and I, 2 truths can be the same at the same time, can be true at the same time. So you and I can have 2 totally different perspectives, but they can both be true. And so I like to remind folks about that as well. And we don't blame or shame in this space, understanding that behavioral change does not happen when we feel blame, when we feel shame, when we feel guilt. Okay, so I wanted to share just a couple of stats. Current gaps in representation in healthcare: 64% of physicians are male and 56% are white. So, that's still another one of the major disparities. Only 6% of physicians identify as Hispanic, but 19% of the population, and then 5% as Black or African American. 13% of the population is Black. And so that's really important, because a lack of diversity may lead to health disparities. I know a lot of you on the call are familiar with that phrase, but I think it's important to bring it to the surface. So evidence shows that broadly speaking, people of color have greater incidence and more severe cases of disease compared to white people in the United States. And so understanding that helps us be able to reflect and engage in the material. I usually like to start with some basic definitions. So equality, you know, folks on the call are like, yes, of course, I believe in equal treatment for everyone. But I like to give this framework because if you see at the bottom, everyone in the bottom of the screen, they're given equal treatment. They're given the same size bicycle, but you can see there are going to be varying levels of success, if not any. The person on the left is not able to use the bicycle at all. And so that's something to think about when we talk about equity and equality. Equity is giving people what they need to succeed. Furthermore, with the definitions, diversity, we know it's our differences. And inclusion is a action word. It's a verb. It's how we engage the differences. And what I like to think about is diversity are puzzle pieces. The inclusion is how we put those puzzle pieces, how they all fit together. And then equity, like I just mentioned, giving people what they need to succeed. Justice, removing barriers, and inclusive excellence is also an active process. How we include, how we excellently is a process and how we include folks. So let's talk about a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset doesn't acknowledge the statistics that I just mentioned, bias amongst healthcare professionals leading to disparities in delivery. And fixed mindsets don't acknowledge the fact that generations of structural racism through housing, economics, schooling, health leads to poor outcomes for people of color. And I also like to say that people don't necessarily have to agree with these things for them to be factual. These are facts. And we live in the best country in the entire world. We are the wealthiest country in the entire world. How did that come to be? Have we ever reflected and thought about how that came to be? If you build something with free labor, then chances are you're able to be maybe wealthier than other places in the world. And we know there's slavery throughout the world. We know that, but we also understand that our country was built when we talk on the backs of slaves. When we talk about slaves being worth $3 billion in many years ago in the 1800s, $3 billion in the 1800s, imagine what that would be now. And so, of course, we were able to be the wealthiest nation in the world. And a fixed mindset a fixed mindset might just dismiss that and say, well, why are we still talking about that? Uninterested in the conversation. A growth mindset would be inquisitive and ask the question, well, why is that? How does that affect people of color? How does that affect Black people today? How does that affect how I deliver care? So I'm going to show you a video in just a minute. So, first thing you see this, somebody's unmuted. We can hear you. There is a picture here, and I'm going to show you a video. Amy, Dr. Pinkall, we can hear you. Okay. So I only showed just a little bit of that video for now. Some of you on the call may have been in a program where I've shown it before. If you've seen it before, I'll show it at the end to show you what happened. So that's kind of a cliffhanger. But another activity that I wanted to show you. So in this frame, how many triangles do you see? And I am going to open up the chat and you will see the chat and I will pull it over to the side. Okay. Oh, you couldn't hear the sound. Okay, you didn't need to hear the sound. There wasn't any sound, but thank you for saying that, Dr. Abrish. So how many triangles do you see? And I'm sorry if you hear my kids in the background. They are getting ready to leave for school. Okay, I see some numbers. Okay, any others? Appreciate your participation. Okay, because you are demonstrating a wonderful point for me today. Anyone else? Okay, wonderful. And you know, we're physicians and a lot of us on the call, and we're really competitive. Okay, I'm going to close the chat and I'm going to tell you there's no triangles. There's no triangles here. Sorry to say, for those of you who really counted and wanted to win the prize, there are no triangles. That is how our bias works. Our bias put lines together to form those triangles. And what happens is we deal with millions of amounts of information at any point in time, and we have to take shortcuts. So that was our brain showing us our shortcuts. So fixed mindset does not acknowledge the rapidity of bias formation, and that is exactly what happened. Having biases does not make us bad people, it makes us human. Understanding what those biases, that's how we engage with this kind of material, learning, understanding, seeing how you interact with the world with implicit and explicit biases. And so how we do that, we have to engage our prefrontal cortex. But how we normally operate 90% of the time or so is, it says 95%, but I've seen different percentages. But 90 to 95%, we are quick, fast, impulsive, automatic, no thoughts. We just go about our day. So we have to engage our prefrontal cortex, slow down, be deliberate and reflective. And when we think about patient care, how often do we make automatic judgments about our patients, and taking a step back and understanding that a little bit further. The ventral medial prefrontal cortex fires when we are thinking about ourselves. Okay, it's activated when thinking about someone we can identify with. But our limbic system fires when people around us are different from us. That's our lower order thinking. And so we have to engage our prefrontal cortex, again, slowing down, asking ourselves questions about why we're feeling the way that we're feeling. Project Implicit is through the Harvard Implicit Association. They have an implicit association test. These are just examples of the test. You can easily Google Project Implicit test, Harvard Implicit Association test, to, in the privacy of your own home, to identify if you have any of these biases. And it does not mean a person is racist or anything like that. It just gives us additional information about how we interact, how we see the world. And again, it's important because on the fixed mindset, we say, oh, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I have biases. It doesn't matter. It's not going to affect my patient care. It's not going to affect my patient care. Growth mindset says, okay, do I have biases? How does this affect how I interact with my patients, how I interact with other faculty? This was an article that we found, and I know it's small print, but I'm going to take you through it in just a moment. So a fixed mindset, fearful, avoidant, dismissive, detached, does not want to engage in this material. But a growth mindset is courageous, it's curious, it's wanting to know more about this that we talk about, diversity, equity, and inclusion, wanting to be supportive and wanting to be a change agent. And how do we do that? We're being mindful, we're reflecting, we're asking, if we're in an area where there's people that don't look like us, why are we fearful? What are we afraid of? And how can we shift our discomfort to action? Results, personal awareness of bias, personal awareness of discrimination, structural racism, building connections and recognizing our advantages. And so that's transition to Privileges and advantages. What is a privilege? A special right, advantage, or immunity granted or available only to certain people. It's the benefit of the doubt. So the benefit of the doubt, one of the other words on there was immunity. The immunity that if you go to the store, somebody like myself, I may be followed. I may not be asked for help. Whereas a person with a certain amount of privilege may get asked for help or may not get followed in the grocery store, which, as you can imagine, that has happened to myself and my children. So can you think of a time when you've used your privilege? Can you think of a time when you've used your privilege? I will share, if you drove in today and did not need to find a handicap parking place, then you used your privilege. And again, did not even realize it. I can tell you a time when I did. I was at a wedding. My son is graduating this year, so I'm a roller coaster of emotions. But I was 18 plus years ago. I was at a wedding, and there was another gal and myself. We were pregnant, and we cut the line. We used our privilege, and we cut the line. My Uncle Bill, on Veterans Day, I like to tell this story. He goes out for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. As a veteran, he uses his privilege and goes out for those meals. And so I give those examples. I oftentimes, if I have time, I go through a privilege activity so that people can be reflective on their own privilege. But this is just a nugget for you to take away and start to look at some of those items. So sample growth initiatives. From that framework, action item number 1, being mindful, sitting with the discomfort. Again, asking yourself, what am I afraid of? Or asking yourself, is there an equity issue? So that it expands beyond Dr. Stuhlman. I know Dr. Stuhlman is not afraid to say, well, hey, what's going on with this patient? I know Dr. Stuhlman will do that. Is there anyone else in the room that's saying, well, wait a minute, what is different about this patient than the other patient that we treated with the same condition? Examine uncertainty, explicit and implicit biases. Number 2, with reflection comes listening, avoiding assumptions, accepting that we are all biased human beings, appreciating and supporting diversity. Number 3, acknowledging additional challenges that some individuals face, learning about social determinants of health, working on anti-racism efforts on your campus. I know that you have an anti-racism group in your department, learning how to use your voice to be an ally and be comfortable with calling in and out colleagues, and doing that in public or in private. Private is probably the most comfortable way of doing that as you're getting used to maybe calling in and calling out folks. But if it's related to a patient and it's in the moment, sometimes we have to call someone out in the moment. Results of courageous, curious, and supportive growth mindset is taking risks, being introspective, aware of our biases, being connection focused, and recognizing the changes in society and supporting the work. So I am going to end, I got to show you the video because of course everyone's wanting to know. Oh, the sound. You don't need the sound, but I'm going to see if I can share the sound. You don't need the sound. I am not condoning. This is not a beer commercial. I told you I had no disclosures, but that I usually have a safe space created so that folks can do a polling and put information as far as how they would react in the situation. And a lot of people will say that I would probably leave if people are open and vulnerable, because a lot of people would acknowledge that they didn't feel comfortable in that. So that's an opportunity for you to think and reflect on that. But as I conclude, having a growth mindset can decrease racism and discrimination due to the learning and unlearning process, understanding the effects on our patients and those around us. And of course, we just have to do more research and more reflection. So I am going to stop sharing, and thank you. I'm sorry, 15 minutes. I really tried to keep it to 15 minutes, Dr. Simons, and I really did.
Thank you so much, Dr. Strong. I feel like, yeah, this is just a teaser. So please, everyone, do watch as UNMC Faculty Development and Office of Inclusion offer programming. You'll be able to find Dr. Strong and colleagues on campus with many other more in-depth exercises and opportunities for learning. So we so appreciate you joining us today. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for the invitation. I'll take care.